So up next, we have a speaker, writer, and the founder of Keeping Creativity Alive, an online resource that helps parents and teachers promote creativity at home and in schools. She holds a master's degree in creativity from the International Center for Studies in Creativity and teaches creative thinking at Sheridan College. Her current research investigates the relationship between parenting styles and attitudes and values towards creativity in young children. An interesting fact about her, in her previous professional life, she was an award-winning art director in the advertising industry. Please welcome Lina Pugsley.
Have you ever wondered why some people grow up creative and others don't? I've always been curious about this. Then 10 years ago, pregnant with my first child, I started to ask myself, is it possible to raise a child to be creative? And how might I raise my child to be creative? Around that time, I watched Ken Robinson's infamous TED Talk, Do Schools Kill Creativity? It fueled my desire to want to learn about how to respect the capacities for creativity that we're all born with. The entire time I was watching that video, as Robinson talked about mass systems of education suppressing creativity, all I could think about was, but what about parents? Do parents kill creativity? Over the past 10 years, I've been thinking about this, and I've been collecting information and research around developing creativity in young children. I started by observing and experimenting with my own children. Wanting to learn more, I enrolled in the master's program at the International Center for Studies in Creativity, where I focused on investigating the literature on parenting and creativity. When I found as much as I could, I decided to explore a research question by partnering with my research mentor, Dr. Salcha Qajar. We surveyed over 1,000 parents to understand the relationship between parenting style and the traits that parents tend to encourage or discourage in children. We wanted to know, do parents tend to support children's creativity, or do they encourage conformity and compliance? The findings of our study confirm assumptions that I had been making early on in my parenting journey. What I'm going to share with you are some of the key insights I discovered over the last 10 years and through my recent research. I call them my guiding precepts for parenting for creativity. 1, love children, but leave them alone. In the 1960s, a group of leading child psychologists, nationally renowned creativity researchers, and professional educators met to discuss child rearing practices for developing creativity in the home and during the early school life of the child. During a panel discussion, they were asked, what do we know and what do we need to know to tell parents and teachers about developing creativity in the child? They discussed things such as providing a responsive home environment, encouraging imagination and fantasy, and being playful with our children. But what really caught my attention was this answer. My piece of advice is to love children, but leave them alone. I find this advice from the 1960s still rings true today, and it's supported by our research. Overall, we found that parents rated creativity-related characteristics, such as asking questions, imaginative, and independent in thinking, as more important than socially acceptable characteristics, such as conforming, competitive, trying to win, and quiet. But what is really interesting is what we learned next. Our study participants were found through an online community that discusses respectful parenting practices. They focus on the importance of respect and trust in a healthy baby's inborn capacities and natural desire to learn. This parenting approach values respect and trust, freedom to explore, uninterrupted play, teaching less, observing more, and allowing time and space for the child to follow his or her natural inborn desires. We asked parents to indicate their knowledge of respectful parenting practices, and this is where it gets interesting. Our findings indicate that parents who rated themselves as having a higher knowledge for respectful parenting practices showed higher support for creative traits in children, and were less supportive of socially acceptable traits. So not only did they encourage creative traits over conforming traits, they were less supportive of conforming traits. And this was unlike the results of parents who did not self-rate as having a high knowledge for respectful parenting. Parents who follow this respectful parenting approach have views consistent with psychologist and philosopher Alison Gopnik, who says we should think of babies as scientists and learning machines constantly experimenting on the world. Much of Gopnik's work highlights the importance of caring for children, but not trying to shape them to turn out a particular way. This is also in line with Carl Rogers' theory of creative environments from the 1950s, which states that creativity is most apt to occur when we foster psychological safety and psychological freedom. Love them, provide psychological safety, but leave them alone. Provide psychological freedom. If we're really mindful about the ways that we're interacting with our children, we can catch ourselves imposing our views and our needs onto them, rather than allowing them to follow their instincts and their interests. And when we do allow them to follow their own inclinations, it can be quite entertaining. Like this impromptu birthday party for Mr. Dragon. Who knew? He was turning 7. I really believe one of the best things we can do for our kids is to do nothing. Don't plan a play date. Don't schedule an activity or plan an outing. Scheduling time for unstructured play really is one of the best things you can do. So often I find that we want to direct our children's play, and when we do, they become more dependent on us and less trusting of their own abilities. It's a vicious cycle, really. When we interfere, we are doing more harm than good. I have an example. This is my youngest, Evelyn, when she was barely 2 years old. We were at the park and she wanted to climb this play structure, this climbing wall, and it was quite high for a little girl. And I really wanted to go in and rescue her. And actually, the entire time she was climbing this wall, she said, "Mommy, help Ayan." That's how she said Evelyn. "Mommy, help Ayan." And the entire time, and I just stood back and guarded and made sure I was there for her if she needed me. But when she reached the top, she turned around and she said, "Mommy, I did it." And so that really meant a lot to me to practice this at that time. 2, refrain from judging them and let them be who they are. Do you ever come up with a fun activity for your child and they want nothing to do with it? This happens to me all the time. I go through a lot of effort to pull together materials for a really great project, and there's zero interest. Or my daughter will want to do another activity her way. And then I realize I can't control my child, nor should I. We need to let them do what they want to do. Another example, my beautiful little girl is in love with making slime. I can't stand it. It's messy, it's wasteful, and how much slime do you need? Glow-in-the-dark slime, fluffy slime, crunchy slime, really? But she loves the process of experimenting and pulling apart that slime and poking it, and I need to remind myself that I need to refrain from judging her and let her be who she is. And when I step back and watch her follow this passion for slime, I notice that she's researching the properties of the ingredients. And who knows, maybe she's practicing to be a chemist or a scientist, or maybe she just loves making slime. 3, be creative, model it. This is a big one, and often easier said than done. When I say be creative, that can mean many things, but what I'm really talking about is modeling the traits of a creative person and living a creative life. A couple of weeks ago, my family went for an end-of-summer jump off the pier. In fact, we hadn't done this since last year, and so now I found my girls, now 6 and 9, standing on that pier wanting to jump, but having to face their fear and build up the courage to do it. They've done it before so many times, but here they were back to facing that fear. Now, I had my bathing suit on, but after seeing how cold the water temperature was that day, I didn't plan on jumping in myself. But what felt like hours standing on that pier afterwards, I finally said, "Okay, let's do this." And I felt the same way that they did in that moment. I knew the water was freezing cold, and that pier is quite high. But I knew that if they saw me take the leap, then they knew that they could too. And so together we jumped. All of the qualities and traits I'm talking about encouraging: courage, risk-taking, perseverance, curiosity, imagination, problem-solving. They're all traits of a creative person. I believe these qualities are within all of us and have the potential to be nurtured. Our research found that parents' attitudes and values toward creativity were significantly and positively related to support for creativity characteristics. Our research tells us we have an opportunity to increase awareness among parents and caregivers of young children of the importance of creative traits and ways to develop children's creativity. The way to nurture creativity in others is to first find it within ourselves, then to value it and be aware of when an opportunity presents itself to encourage it in others, and especially in our children. Next time you are with a child, be mindful of how you are interacting with them. Are you encouraging creative traits and maybe even some struggle to allow them to learn on their own? Are you noticing their interests? Observe more, do less. As parents, we have the weight of the world on our shoulders. Let's not make it more difficult than it needs to be. Thank you.